Hello.
Hello.
Happy Sunday. February something. 7th.
We already established, I don't know how many times. Nobody knows how time works.
Yeah, it was a super long first week of February. It feels like it should be March.
Like the Super Bowl.
It's going on right now.
Yes.
Octogenarian Tom Brady going to win.
I was like, who do you know that's an octogenarian that you were about to
Thomas
say?
Brady.
And then I got it.
I can't watch him win another Super Bowl. I'm a Bills fan. Congrats.
Yeah, I don't know. I was asking, like, why is he still playing football? But I guess if you are good at one thing, you just do it for as long as you can. I don't know.
Just keep rolling.
I don't know. This is like the perspective of someone who like doesn't like the idea of staying in the same job for 5 years.
That's right.
I'm just like, I don't understand. Like my parents both
people are different.
Both worked in their jobs for decades, and I'm like, how? Teach me how to be content.
Teach me how to say goodbye.
Oh my god. Oh, I forgot to write that in my notes. There was something that made me think about Hamilton, but I can't remember what it is. Maybe it'll come up in the course of conversation.
I'm sure it will, because Hamilton is awesome.
Hamilton is the album that has been on repeat in this household for since December, I feel like.
Yep. We watched it again yesterday.
Because I looked, we don't have Disney Plus anymore, and I was like, oh, I wish that there was like a DVD, and it's coming out in October. That's what I discovered yesterday.
Right. Yeah, so we will buy that one.
Wait for my birthday to listen to Hamilton. It'll be, instead of putting Harry Potter for Winston's movie, we'll put Hamilton, and he will learn how to sing.
Alexander Hamilton?
Or Eliza. Anyway, this is not a Hamilton podcast episode, although I was going to pitch that to you for a special episode, is that we could certainly talk about Hamilton.
Every song.
For a special episode of Magical Theory. Let us know if you would enjoy that. Anyway, yeah, it is Sunday.
It's a long chapter. Should we just hop in?
Sure. Why not? We have our wands this time.
Wands ready. Only at the last second, but yeah, we did. We did remember.
Where are the wands?
Okay, turn to page 269, Snape's Grudge. Today's lesson is called At What Cost?
Stop it. You named an episode At What Cost? Oh, awesome.
The chapter begins with Hogwarts reacting to the latest Sirius Black intrusion. As Ron recounts his story to all takers, he and Harry receive an invitation from Hagrid to visit. On that visit, Hagrid tells the boys that Hermione has been having a tough time and chastises them for their roles in it. As they consider their attitude towards her, she warns Harry not to go to Hogsmeade for the sake of his safety. When the Hogsmeade trip begins, however, Harry ignores her and decides to use the secret tunnel to join Ron. On his way, he bumps into Neville in front of the entrance to the secret pathway, who is not allowed to Hogsmeade as a punishment.
Oh my gosh.
Eventually, Harry shakes Neville and finds Ron outside in Hogsmeade, being harassed by Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. Harry takes the opportunity to throw mud and sticks at them while under his invisibility cloak, though he does accidentally show his face for a moment. Harry retreats back to Hogwarts to avoid being caught and loses his invisibility cloak on the way. Snape confronts Harry soon after he arrives and accuses him of sneaking out and flaunting the rules, even when they are expressly to protect him. Snape claims that Harry is taking after his father, who frequently broke rules. Harry lashes out with the fact that James saved Snape's life, but Snape shatters the illusion that Harry's father did it heroically, telling Harry that James simply backed out on a prank that might have caused Snape's death. As Harry reels from the story, Hermione tells him that Hagrid has lost the appeal and Buckbeak is sentenced to death.
Yeah.
Big chapter, lots.
Why aren't you talking to Hermione yet? Gosh.
I know, it's outrageous.
Get over it, Ron. I know you're 13.
It is
12,
absolutely
13,
outrageous.
Whatever. You are ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
And but that line, Hagrid says something like, oh, people get crazy about their pets, and then it's just like, cut to Buckbeak. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, because J.K. Rowling even writes, like, he said, like, wisely or whatever, like, with a, because he knows he's talking about himself.
Yeah.
Because I almost named it Do As I Say, Not As I Do. But, yeah.
Oh. Well, okay, so I started down this rabbit hole about portraits.
Ooh,
I don't
rabbit
know.
holes.
I have question. I know we've
Mhm.
discussed portraits briefly before because I remember we talked about Sir Cadogan specifically with the
Mhm.
Sir Cadogan pony idiom thing,
Mhm.
and just like how he is in general and whatever. But also, okay, in my research, one of the you know how Google like fills it in for you. One of the things that came up was Sir Cadogan critical role. Appar apparently, I won't say I don't know because there were, like, a lot of spoiler alerts on this
Okay.
post or whatever, but basically, there's a mention of Sir Cadogan in
Hmm.
a campaign interaction or
Oh,
something that
I don't
happens,
remember.
and
Or
yeah,
yeah.
it's not, like, a major part
Mhm.
of the
Cool.
storyline,
I'm
but
gonna have
it's,
to
like,
look
a
it up later.
mentioning of it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just like, "Oh, interesting," because they just kept coming up, and I was like, "What is this?" Anyway, my question, my main question that sent me down this exploration of portraits was like, because the way that it was phrased was about like, oh well, Sir Cadogan got fired. That was the first like little woo woo on my brain. I was like fired, and then the fat lady
They just
came
burn
back
his
to her
portrait.
job or agreed to come back to her job if she had security, and I was like, wait a second.
Who's getting paid for this?
Yeah, like, y'all have portraits doing labor
Their
for you?
descendants. Yeah.
It was just, like, a funny moment because I was like, there I don't even know, like, what to say because like, you could have an actual guard keeper of the dormitory, a person.
Yeah, it's like when they're using actors that like aren't
CGI?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Bringing
yeah,
back from
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
dead?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It started with
'cause
Tupac, right? And like this idea of
the
who is
hologram.
paying for who is getting paid for this. It's like a way of
Well,
really extract. It's
it's
very,
actually
very
it's
scary to me
very, very strange. There was that
because
thing
it crowds out new people.
There was that thing that I shared with you
We'll
that
just
one
use Tom
time
Hanks for everything,
about there was like a viral tweet about a college student who's taking a class and they wanted to reach out
right?
to their professor.
That's
Their
what I was thinking
professor
about.
was dead.
Yes,
And the university was using this
yes,
professor's
yes,
digital materials
yes,
for an online class.
yeah.
And I was like,
That is
okay,
bad.
being this
That's
is like
very
what
bad.
I do. Then I
Yeah.
basically texted one of my colleagues and I was like, you are my second. If I die, burn all my course materials.
To the
And it was
ground.
just like, oh, anyway, but yeah, that it was
Oh man,
kind of
I would
like
definitely sign into a lawsuit over that. Like of saying like no, we're
yeah, you are not allowed
no,
to
you do not own this stuff. And you can't
teach
run
courses
courses
on my
with
behalf.
dead
Because
people.
apparently his name was like listed as the professor. I don't know
Yeah.
because there's a TA, of course. You need to have like an actual live
I mean
person to
it's
be
bad
able.
enough. We're already on the well, okay, let's not get
Yeah,
into it.
we're in a
But
different rabbit hole. But yeah,
that was what I
yeah,
didn't think of that, but
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm thinking about this because I'm like, they're portraits, and I know that we briefly discussed portraits before, that they're not like because part of the question then is like, are you alive? Do you like
Mm,
have self-awareness or
mm,
sentience? And there's like some weirdness in there. So portraits, and I remember you brought this up about like the way that the portrait person is in the portrait depends on the artist and their like perception of that
right, I
person.
remember
So
that.
that's why like Sir Cadogan, he like his whole thing is like, oh yeah, like attack and like whatever, falling off his horse or whatever the case is.
Bravery.
But also like the more powerful the individual witch or wizard is, the more like them that they'll be. So like there I read a little bit
Hmm.
about Dumbledore's portrait. But basically in the wizarding world, writings by J.K. Rowling for Hogwarts portraits, she mentioned Sir Cadogan and the Fat Lady and said that neither of these portraits would be capable of having a particularly in-depth discussion about more complex aspects of their lives. Literally and metaphorically, they're two-dimensional, which I thought was interesting because like there is some sort of thought that goes into it. Like you have this portrait, but they're like a one-off
It's a
representation of
simile.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's not actually them. Um but some magical portraits are capable of more interaction. Traditionally, a headmaster or headmistress is painted before their death, which would make sense for why Dumbledore has a portrait of himself.
Mhm.
And once the portrait is completed, the headmaster or headmistress in question keeps it under lock and key, regularly visiting it in its cupboard if so desired, to teach it to act and behave exactly like themselves. I thought that was interesting. And imparting all kinds of useful memories and pieces of knowledge that may then be shared through the centuries with their successors in
So it's
office.
very AI-ish.
Yeah.
Or it's like, yeah, it's like a computer almost. Like you
Yeah.
can teach it a
Yeah.
program.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
it is interesting of like for that specifically with the headmasters, because we have the Hogwarts pensive, which is also supposed to be an artifact that persists institutional memory over long periods of time, because it's kept in the headmaster's office. But then you also have like the whole, like we see it in the movies, like all the headmasters, and they like,
So
chatter
here's what I'm
about.
wondering. Is it like a magical tether, or could like somebody pretend to be Dumbledore and teach his portrait like something
Yeah,
false?
that I don't know
Probably
if I
hasn't been
got
addressed,
into the
but
right,
like,
right.
but
Because
I'm
I don't
wondering
know
about that.
exactly like part of the magic imbuing as it's being painted. I don't know
Right.
like to what extent like the magic connects it to like, the
Right.
actual living person, or how that works, or I don't know.
Well, like, and portraits can be linked as well. We'll find that one in
Yeah.
book 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's wow, interesting.
So there's also another
Teaching it,
feature
huh?
on Wizarding World that compares it's not in depth or anything, but portraits versus ghost. And so basically, J.K. Rowling says that the people in the paintings it's like an aura of them. So, I forgot the specific example. There was, is it like Sirius's mom? I don't remember who it is, but there was a portrait of somebody, and all they could say was basically catchphrases. It wasn't anything like complex and whatever. So,
It was a basic program.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I'm going to capture
It's interesting to me that there's this extra layer of like the headmistress teaching their portrait. I would
Yeah.
have just from purely like how I would do it, I would have thought that it would have been based on the skill of the artist.
Well,
If they were
but that's why
better, they would have made
there's
like
an interaction to it. So that's why, like, or at least in the way that she constructed it in her mind, but like that it's not just like perception of the artist is one element, but strength of the witch and wizard is another element.
Right.
So being
right.
Albus Dumbledore as such a powerful wizard, being able to influence or essentially teach this thing, which I still don't know the answer to. Are you alive? Are you not alive? Because back to the ghost thing though. Ghosts are more fleshed out, and we see like ghosts are snarky. They can interact in real time. There's more like they are closer to a person than
They seem to have their
portraits are.
entire memory,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I know.
And J.K. Rowling said in an interview, if Harry had a portrait of his parents, it would not help him a great deal. If he could meet them as ghosts, that would be a much more meaningful interaction. But of course he doesn't. Also in this feature, and I posted this in my own Discord server because of Harry Potter Wizards Unite, there at the end of this article, there's a little header. It says, so, nobody's painted a portrait of Voldemort, have they? Because there's a portrait of Voldemort in Harry Potter Wizards Unite. Not that we spotted, thank Merlin, is what it says. So now I'm just like, who painted this portrait of Voldy? What is that? Because I don't know exactly when this was posted originally on Pottermore. It could be that somebody painted a portrait of Voldy, or maybe it was hidden away, or maybe we didn't know about it. But the other element of portraits is that, and we see this with the fat lady, because this is the tying it back together. She agrees, I'll do it again. I'll be the person that gets the passwords if I have security. So that to me, I'm just like, what?
Why?
Are you alive? Like that was my thing. So I didn't get a straight answer, but I did find that portraits can be destroyed. And so because what I was reading said, because she responds in that way, it can be inferred that
she doesn't want to be destroyed.
She doesn't want to be destroyed. Like she wouldn't exist anymore. So there is some weird sort of like self-awareness, or like wanting to preserve whatever state you're in as a portrait person. I don't know. That was interesting though.
It's very interesting. Yeah. It's really, because it gets very metaphysical very fast of like, what is actually are they just kind of a hologram that can learn like a computer program, or are they like almost a fragment of the person? if
Oh
they can
my
like learn
God.
this stuff, right? So it's kind of a
Another
tricky.
Horcrux. No.
Yeah,
Just
but not
kidding. We
clearly
don't know about
not, but
Horcruxes
like
right now.
it feels like it's floating
Right,
in
right.
that universe. It's kind of or like that it has avoided that question by being
Yeah.
like, oh, it's actually like very 2D and very simple, but you can
Yes.
teach it if you want, but it doesn't like take
There's
anything from you.
I wanted to pull out Cursed Child because apparently in Cursed Child, Harry talks to the portrait of Dumbledore.
Right.
And the portrait of Dumbledore says something back to Harry of like, I'm just memories and paint. So that and like that as being
Mhm.
pointed, that's like a very, very like
Pointed
self-aware,
answer.
pointed,
Right.
like, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
So it
Well, I
is.
like that.
Mhm.
I like that concept. I feel like we'll talk similarly when we do get to the pensive as well. Another
Mhm.
kind of tricky
Oh my gosh.
metaphysical thing of like what exactly is going on with these memories, I don't
Yeah.
know.
We just read Half Blood Prince and there was like a question about like the pensive and memories and like what is it? And I'm
That's
like,
right.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
even know if the answer is out there. I'm not sure. Because when you start doing stuff with memory and then
The
it's
fact there
like,
can be
well,
alterations and
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like how does it work? What is it? What is the thing? Like that is where all my questions come down to.
yeah.
And I'm not satisfied with the, oh, it's a magical
You'll never
world.
be
And I'm like, no, I
satisfied.
will never be. See, that's the connection to Hamilton.
Nailed it. Matter of time.
This is a very minor, like, it doesn't really, it's not important really, but on page 285, there's a typo.
Oh.
It says, here, let me just show you. It says, Snap picked up the Zonko's bag.
Old Snap. Severus Snap.
So it reminded me of like Trelawney. When we read about Trelawney last
you mean
book.
Relani?
Sybil was spelled. I was staring at it like on the paper, and I was like, I don't think I've seen it spelled this way, and I thought that I was misremembering because we know memories are so fragile as we're speaking about memories right
Yeah,
now.
pensive.
So then I Googled it, and I was just like, I was having the Mandela effect. Like, what is this?
Yeah,
is it simple? Is it SI? Is it SY? I don't know how it's spelled, but it's possible. It's within the realm of possibilities that, especially if we have an early like edition of the book, I don't even know that it was just a typo. I don't know.
Was this book
If
3?
it's book
This
3,
book?
yeah.
It's the first edition, but there were tons of them. So the first
All
printing.
right, so for everyone who has Prisoner of Azkaban, page 285, second to last line.
Yeah.
Is it Snap or
Doesn't
Snape?
mean, yeah.
Right.
That one I could see getting fixed for later printings.
Yeah.
Because it was so popular that it would have enough
printing's
people
not
would have
edition,
had
but
the printing that they probably got a lot of mail about it.
You're like,
There's an email. What does this mean?
I don't understand the sentence.
Just wait until
Oh my god.
Wizards Unite and having to look at caps.
Oh man,
letters.
they misspelled Marauder's map. Well, they didn't misspell it. They didn't put the apostrophe. So it was just Marauders, like straight out, and without the apostrophe. It was like Brilliant Marauders. And I was like, wait a second, is it Marauder? So I looked at our little designs that are like the Marauders map. Yeah, because fandoms are crazy, including me. It's like, what's this? You're missing an apostrophe. Speaking of the Marauders map, well, I don't know. Is there anything that stood out to you that you wanted to talk? I feel bad for Neville. Poor little Neville.
Yeah.
He got blasted.
Yeah.
Poor Neville. He got all of the punishment.
I feel bad for anyone who has a bad memory because I have a bad memory.
Yeah.
So I can relate.
And that's like his whole thing is that like part of what we talked about also, because we were just seeing him open up with Lupin and of having someone who isn't just screaming at him and telling him that he's like incompetent or like because that's part of it. If you are insecure about something and you get even the slightest hint that other people are looking at you based on that insecurity, then it just like spirals out of control. And for the first time, we're seeing Neville not feeling that with Lupin, and then here we go, come crashing down again, and it's bad. And he gets the howler and everything. Ron is just like, run. Because he knows. Poor kids.
Yeah.
And poor Miney. Miney's also sad. But
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the scene with Hagrid, but we kind of talked about it. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about Snape. And
yeah, so there's this whole like okay, so the second time or this second time that Harry goes to Honeydukes or goes to Hogsmeade, I'm just like, you don't need to go to Hogsmeade, but Ron is like, oh yeah,
it's
like
the
you didn't get to see this, and blah,
rebelliousness,
blah.
right?
There's like,
Just for the
because you
sake of
got away
rebelliousness.
with it for the first time. Nobody seems to know that this secret passageway exists, and he almost actually doesn't even make it through because of Neville and because of Snape. And I'm just like, Harry, just whatever. You're the chosen one. You'll do whatever you want. um, but all of that happens. I found it kind of comical for Malfoy to see a floating head Harry and get scared and get like hit with a mud ball and
Oh yeah,
all of
no, it's a
that.
great scene.
Even though, I mean, he's just so mean. He is. I know that I at the end of the stories and like when I see more of conflicted Draco, I'm just like, oh, but I forget how mean he is. He's terrible. He's a terrible person,
Yeah,
child.
he is. Yes, he is.
So yeah, always teasing Ron. It's the same thing because every single book that we've read, it's like Draco antagonizing and Ron
Well, what I
like
find fascinating
for him.
is the juxtaposition of Draco and James, right? Because I feel like
Mm,
they're probably more similar than
yeah.
Harry and James.
Yep.
So there's something there about like you that people can change like that. And I feel like Snape, this is a really great scene because it's one of the first times that Snape gets, speaking of 2D, less 2D, more 3D,
Mm.
where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he has not only, he doesn't just say something snickery to Harry, he
Mm-hmm.
has a legitimate grievance.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, let's assume he's telling the truth. And he's like, no, no. Oh, you think he is such a hero?
Yeah, you don't know your dad.
Yeah.
Did Dumbledore tell you the
The
whole
whole story.
story? Did
Yeah.
he tell
No,
you
he
or
didn't. First of all, no. As you know, Severus, no, he never tells anyone the whole story.
Yeah. So your point about Draco being closer to James
Hmm.
is interesting to me because we're already like spoilery already at this point, but like at this point, like if Snape didn't have a good relationship with James Potter, and but if Draco does like a similar dynamic, but he's like in your house on your team, like I don't know, that's kind of like,
Well,
wouldn't he empathize with
to me, the parallels
Harry?
are, yes, the parallels are really strong if you want them to be between like Draco and James and then Harry and Snape. That
Mm,
they're Harry and Snape often occupy the same kind of space in the school as kids, like being kind of outcasty. I mean, obviously Harry is super famous, but he doesn't have a ton of friends.
mm-hmm.
And like questioning what house you wanted to be in, which is going to be a part of the
Yeah.
arc
Oh
for
man.
Snape, and
Yeah.
like being able to make that choice. And yeah, it's really interesting to think about, like, in some ways Snape doesn't understand that he's also bullying himself. Like, he doesn't, the same way that Harry doesn't see Snape, Snape doesn't really see Harry and what Harry actually, what his everyday life is actually like.
Mm,
And so we'll see, like, many books
mm-hmm.
from now,
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
Dumbledore's like, that's not how anyone else sees him. They're just telling us, they're telling me that he's just a bright and humble boy who's kind of shy. And Snape's like, he's arrogant and
Yeah. Yeah.
all this.
Yeah, it does go to like we talked about this. It might maybe in book one, like you're gonna see what you want to see, and that's
Uh,
like that's part of it. And so if you already, I mean, not only is he like the spawn of James Potter,
right.
but like as like the framing of it, but that's kind of that is basically all of the relationship. So like
Yeah,
Harry already he has thought Snape has been bad since the very beginning,
right.
and yeah, he has like some reasons for it, but I guess I don't know.
I think it's
It's
a really
interesting.
good point of like, you see what you want to. I think another way of even saying it is like that everyone is looking through a kaleidoscope, right? So everyone sees something different
I think
because,
the episode was actually called Kaleidoscope. I
was
think
it
you named it Kaleidoscope. Yeah,
like, you don't have this, oh, a previous
a
episode of the
previous
show?
episode of
Oh,
the show.
geez.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
yeah.
good job,
Good
past
job,
Jeff.
past Jeff. Way to be Pull out a major theme.
Yeah, and I just think like there's something going on with Harry and Snape that's deeper than like hating James.
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like what Harry represents to Snape and the baggage.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Well, okay, so the Marauders map, I'm just making this connection right now. So we were talking about the portraits earlier and like that being some sort of like 2D or it's well like anything that is I'm realizing now I have been talking all about like the internet preserving our existence and like trapping us basically in past selves that we can't ever escape. But the wizarding world has those things as well. So we have like aspects of memory. We have the, or like in the pensive, we have the portraits. But the Marauders map is another instance of like, so Snape is trying to figure out like what is this blank piece of parchment. He like talks at it and like tells it to like reveal itself and whatever. And then you have writing of Mr. Mooney, Mr. Prongs, Mr. And these are actual people. Because knowing what I know at the end of the series and reading this, being like, I'm like analyzing like who says what and what are they saying. And Mr. Prongs is very mean, very, very mean. Very mean.
Almost
He calls
like
him an ugly
a bully.
git, and I'm like, what? Because I'm just thinking in this moment as this scene is unfolding because I have the like end of the story perspective on this, and I'm like I'm like imagining like Snape's actual reaction as he's like basically reliving a bunch of people, the same people, calling him these names and saying to leave his big nose out of it. Oh, and can't believe that they let him become a professor. And just, it's just, oh, man.
Yeah.
But those are people who were kids. Well, spoilers again. But in terms of preservation of like, that is what this, or how I imagine this map will operate if the what does he call it again? The manufacturers. The manufacturers, like, and so I don't know. It's fascinating because then it's if this is all you knew of these individual people, like imagine like what you would think about them if you didn't know anything else. But I guess that's also just life. You only have a piece of interacting with people.
Oh yeah, it's a lot.
I don't know if any of what I said made sense because I started like revealing stuff and then censoring myself and just.
Well, we're not spoiler free, so it's perfectly fine. But I think that there's some. This is such an intriguing chapter because there's just so much depth to what is actually happening. The fact that Lupin now has seen this.
Lupin got called out. I was like, Lupin. Well, Harry even knew that something was a little weird with the conversation because he was just like. The manufacturers, and so Harry was like he didn't know what he was talking about, but he also thought that Lupin seemed to not know as well. But that was interesting. Lupin got mad though. He got mad at them. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, he says it basically. He was just like, I can't make you care about Sirius or not encountering.
But you should at least be afraid of the Dementors.
Yeah,
he says,
yeah.
Like I thought at least you would be smart enough to not provoke the Dementors. Yeah. This book, I'm really looking forward to the climax of this book because it's such a uniquely toned book in the series because Voldy isn't the main antagonist in this part of the story, which is really fascinating because in all of the other 6 he is.
I've had lots of people say this is their favorite book to me.
So many people like this book the most. Yeah, I'm still partial to 6, but of course I like them all. And I think they each have different merits. And I feel like this is the tone. The merit is the tone. And the part of it is that I can't parse it away from the movies. The tone of the third movie moves so much more mature compared to the first two that for a lot of different reasons. But,
right.
But I think partly because of the content and like it just is really, it's a very good story. it's a really a good story because of how things kind of come together
Mm-hmm.
towards the end, and we're really getting there, and the map is a big part, and like
Yeah.
these seeming accidents with
There is so much that hasn't happened
yeah.
yet.
And there's a lot of weird puzzles, right? Where there's
Mm-hmm.
the puzzle of like, why didn't Black just kill Ron and then go kill Harry? Like, why
Yeah.
was he just
It's interesting
scampering out?
that they like this is not the first time that it's so subtle because part of it is like they say the things that are foreshadowing, but it's not so in your face about it. It feels like a natural question. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not an aggressive like
Yeah.
in your face question that's like,
Right.
I wonder what this means. It's more like, oh, like in
Why
the
didn't he
context of
why didn't he
retelling
just
this
kill you?
story. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not it's so natural that I really appreciate that about all the because she's done that in all 3 books so far, but I've
Right.
appreciated how non-aggressive the
Well,
like
and the fact that she returned the same clue here, right? In the last chapter, she
mm,
was like, what? I can't believe Sirius Black would have gone to the wrong
yeah,
doorpost.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the follow up is like, well, but even if he did make that mistake, why would it have altered what he was there to do?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he just kill all of you? He's killed multiple people before. Like, who care? Why would he care?
Yeah.
Just explode the whole room, or something like
Mhm.
that. And so it's a great way of doing it where like you have these unexplained things because in essence you should be asking yourself, it's hard to avoid as a reader asking yourself, well, why wouldn't, if Sirius Black is this killer, like why wouldn't he have just
Mhm.
done that? It makes perfect
Mhm.
sense, right? The logical consistency is there. And therefore, like something about your assumptions must be wrong.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. It's a great chapter. It was a long chapter, but it is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
great
yeah.
chapter. Yeah.
Well, that's all I have.
Cool.
Okay.
That was fun.
Yeah. Until next time.
One's
Mine's
ready.
ready.